Here we're going to evaluate the integral, and then we're going to use integration by parts. So we have the integral x times the cosine of 5x dx. So by integration by parts, we're going to let u equal x, and then dv is going to equal the cosine of 5x dx. Now in step 2, we're going to take the derivative of both sides for the first part. So we're going to get du, which is equal to the derivative of x, which is 1, and that's dx. And then dv, we want to take the antiderivative, so we're going to get v. So what is the antiderivative of the cosine of 5x? So remember, let's just review taking the antiderivative of this. So for the antiderivative of the cosine of 5x dx, what we're going to do is we're going to let u represent 5x. And so therefore du is going to equal 5 dx. Divide both sides by 5, and then 1/5 du is going to equal dx. And so now if we want to take the antiderivative of this, we're going to get the cosine of u times 1/5 du. And so then when we factor out the constant of 1/5, we want to take the antiderivative of the cosine of u du. Well, we know that the antiderivative of the cosine of u is the sine of u. So we have 1/5 times the sine of u. And therefore, that would be plus c. And we would get 1/5 times the sine of u, which is 5x. So therefore, this is the antiderivative of the cosine of 5x dx. So v is going to equal 1/5 times the sine of 5x. Now in step number 3, we're going to write down the original problem, which is the integral of x times the cosine of 5x dx, and that's going to equal u times v minus v du. So what do we know about u? We know it's x, and we know that v is 1/5 times the sine of 5x, minus, we know that v is 1/5 times the sine of 5x times du, which is dx. So now let's go ahead and rearrange our first term. That's going to be 1/5 times x times the sine of 5x, minus, we're going to factor out the 1/5, and then we're going to take the antiderivative of the sine of 5x dx. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and take the antiderivative of this. And so the antiderivative of the sine of 5x dx, we're going to let u equal 5x, and so therefore du is going to equal 5 dx, and therefore 1/5 du is going to equal dx. So we have the sine of u times 1/5 du, and so factoring out the 1/5, and then integrate the sine of u du. Well, the antiderivative of the sine of u is times negative cosine of u. And so therefore we factor out the negative sign, so we have negative 1/5 times the cosine of u, which is 5x. So now we're going to bring that back in to our problem. So we have 1/5 x times the sine of 5x minus 1/5 times negative 1/5 times the cosine of 5x. And so now if we distribute that negative 1/5, we get 1/5 x times the sine of 5x plus a negative times a negative is a positive, and that's 1/25 times the cosine of 5x, and therefore there is our result.